Well, we got some good news and bad news for the Nintendo Direct that people were waiting to hear about. It did get announced. That's the good news. The bad news, it's not the kind of Direct people were really hoping to hear about. I'm sure many people were pre-recording their predictions videos and stuff, as I already saw some people mention, and now they've had to scrap it because it's not a general Nintendo Direct. No, it's a partner showcase, which has already brought into question Nintendo's strategy and plans here for the rest of the year, which we're going to touch on that tomorrow morning in Newswave. And Newswave's going to go up earlier than usual tomorrow morning, just because give a little bit of a buffer there before the Direct, which again, we're going to go over as I'm going to give you guys a bunch of games, some predictions, some thoughts as to what could be shown here that mostly amounts to like a shotgun blast of titles, and we'll see what we hit on here. I will at least give you guys what I think might be the opener, we'll say, just a guess there for a game, and what could be the big closeout that gets a reaction from everyone online. So if you guys enjoy this video, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new. So real quick, let's take a look. This is over on Nintendo's official account saying, join us for a Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase tomorrow, July 31st at 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern. So you see why I'm going to post the Newswave earlier than usual, probably by a few hours, to be honest. I mean, if you tune in usually at 8 a.m., it'll be there either way, but you could technically check it out even earlier if you want. Tune in for roughly 25 minutes of information on upcoming Nintendo Switch 2 and Nintendo Switch games from our publishing partners. So there will be some cross-gen stuff in there, not too surprising, I guess, with third parties in general maybe trying to hit not only the large install size for the outgoing Switch system, but also the new system that they can take advantage of and get better visuals and frame rates and games that are just not at all possible on the Switch 1. Still, though, the partner showcase, while it was a possibility, has thrown people off naturally because, again, the question comes up, what exactly is Nintendo doing with their own first-party games? And I do want to point out, they say publishing partners here. They don't say developing partners. I think that's a very important thing to note because previous partner showcases, they do say publishing partners and developing partners. To me, because they're not saying developing partners, kind of throws out things like Age of Imprisonment that's not being developed by Nintendo. It's Koei Tecmo. Even kind of Kirby Air Riders. You could have made a case for that because it's Sakurai and probably Bandai Namco he's working with there. So this is going to be games that are not at all published by Nintendo, just based on their own language they decided to use here. So now it's like, okay, we're looking strictly third-party games across the board. That could be good or bad depending on the way you're looking at it, because for me, when I started going through a lot of the predictions and guesses, I was just coming up with games that are kind of already out at this point, that a lot of these publishers, third-party publishers, are thinking, oh, wow, we can now move this over to the Switch 2. I don't necessarily have in any certain order here. I have separated them out based on just some categories as guesses or even likely to be here, which we'll start with the likely to be here games, and I'll show you guys just some random trailers and stuff as we're going through. But I think a good opener for this would be Elden Ring Tarnished Edition. It makes a ton of sense to do that. It's an incredibly popular game. Got a good reaction when it was announced for the Switch 2 and when they did the big blowout reveal for the system. And it's supposed to be coming out this year, so I think you get that thing dated and make the big push for its release. On top of that, though, we know Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate also supposed to be coming out later this year. Hades 2, it's a 2025 game. Yooka-Laylee, that was announced with the little eyes next to the Nintendo logo, and that seems to be kind of like a remake of Yooka-Laylee for the newer platforms. Seems like a good place for that. There's Professor Layton, right? That new game that's kind of floating around out there. Ubisoft has already had Assassin's Creed Shadows not only mentioned, I believe is also rated, along with Dragon Ball Sparking Zero from Bandai Namco. That's also been rated. Persona 3 Reload has been rumored a bit here and there, and it kind of makes sense. It's a game that would sell well on a platform that's, yes, incredibly popular in Japan. And then the Rogue Prince of Persia, which we're waiting to hear information about. It's supposed to be releasing on consoles, I believe, in August. Seems like a good spot for them to make that official here with the date. Now, I think we're also going to get a lot of reminders for games. So titles that already have release dates, and maybe they work their way into, say, a sizzle reel towards the end. So Star Wars Outlaws, that's September 4th. You also have Daemon X Machina, Titanic Scion. That's coming out September 5th. It wouldn't surprise me if maybe that got a demo. Okay, and that on its own is a big announcement. You get a demo like that for a game that I think looks really cool, and it's something maybe you can download right then and there and start just trying out. And they can make it so your save data also carries over. So that's something to keep in mind with a third party, a direct like this, a partner showcase. You could come out the other side with some demos to check out right away. Borderlands 4, that is coming October 3rd, and then naturally a bunch of sports games, like a big sports section with the FC 26, Madden, NBA. That wouldn't surprise me if that was also part of that sizzle reel. Now let's take a shot at a couple of guesses here. Games that haven't necessarily been in the news for ratings that have popped up or even kind of mentioned by some of the publishers or developers, starting with Final Fantasy 16. Now I know it was kind of asked of Yoshi P is like, what about the Switch 2? He's like, that's the last one left, huh? Well, with Final Fantasy 7 Intergrade, we assume being here, that would be a good follow-up, kind of like what they did with the Xbox show where they had Final Fantasy 16, that just shadow dropped, and then they talked about Intergrade. I don't think 16 would shadow drop here, but it wouldn't shock me if it was there and it's like, oh yeah, 2026 for that. And that would be a pretty interesting announcement just to see how it runs on the Switch 2, because that is a noticeably choppy game at times on the PlayStation 5. So it'd just be something interesting from a technical standpoint, just to see it running there. I think something like Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor from EA could also be here, as they backported Jedi Survivor to the older Xbox and PlayStation 4 systems. So to me, the Switch 2 would line up and them still trying to sell more and more copies here of what's become a pretty popular series, with the third one still coming up to kind of close out the trilogy. It's like, yeah, if we can get it there, why not? And then that brings us to Capcom, as, I mean, you can just start naming off all these Resident Evil remake games, 2, 3, 4, those all make sense here. And I mean, you can throw, Village, throw that in there if you want, but I am really curious to see RE Engine on the Switch 2 in these capacities, like they're higher end titles, and just see how it runs, how it looks, because I mean, this is an engine with these games that perform very, very well on the Steam Deck. So I'm curious how it would perform on a system like the Switch 2 with things like DLSS and other aspects to it, and them creating specifically for it. That would be at least something interesting, again, from a technical standpoint. Tales of Arise, people have forgotten about this. Seems like one of those weird Nintendo Direct things to have that come out of left field and remind you of it all over again as it gets moved over by Bandai Namco. I have Like a Dragon down, and I'm not really sure how they would go about it, because we had Yakuza 0, the director's cut that just came out, so it makes sense to then follow up with some of the older Yakuza games. But Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth has shown to be pretty popular, as well as just Yakuza 7 Like a Dragon. I don't know if they just jump up to these turn-based games and are like, here you go, we're just going to move over some of the newer ones. I don't know. It's a strange position for Sega and RGG in that sense, but they could also just move all the games over and just say, hey, here's just a Yakuza collection almost. We're just going to drop them all onto the service over the next year or so. Now, with that, I do think something like Death Stranding could be there, because we've already seen it go to multiple platforms, including Mac OS, with those M series chips, and it's performed very, very well. It'd be interesting because this would be the Decima engine debuting on the Switch 2. So that's something to keep in mind there with all the discussion we've heard about Sony and them maybe looking around at some other platforms to move things to. Just saying, we can see the Decima engine and how it functions here. Horizon's, out there somewhere. At least a game that's not out yet that might be shown is Metal Gear Solid Delta. That would be cool just to see this game show up just ahead of its release. I don't think it would be ready for the same release date at the end of August. I mean, we're less than a month out. Be odd for them to announce it now and then it come out in like 4 weeks. But that could be something maybe that is slated for the beginning of 2026 even, just at least put out there that it is coming to Nintendo's new system. Here's an interesting one. Red Dead Redemption 2. That's been rumored because of an update that could be going to PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series, but also just a full Switch 2 version. Again, that is a game that still looks incredible. It needs help with the frame rate department on the Xbox Series and the PS5, but seeing it run on the Switch 2, especially in like portable mode, would be awesome. But there's also that GTA 4 remaster, remake rumor that's also floating around. What an interesting timeline to see Take-Two and Rockstar show up at a Nintendo Direct and announce GTA 4 remaster, remake, and then also Red Dead Redemption 2 coming to the platform. Just for it to have its own little section there would be kind of strange, but now I'm thinking about it after looking at the Switch 1, also wouldn't be too surprising. Next, I just have the Microsoft section, because we've been waiting to hear Microsoft make announcements for the Switch 2, because they seem very, very interested in this device. Why wouldn't they be? Minecraft, which does need a Switch 2 version and would make sense here, has been incredibly popular for them in Japan. So beyond that, we just see how Microsoft is also moving currently with a ton of stuff, not only going to PS5, but being extremely successful there. So if I had to just look around at their library of titles currently that they're moving to other platforms, the two that stick out to me are Sea of Thieves, because it's a live service game that just needs more players as they go along, and the Switch 2, having just released, is only going to be building on their install size consistently now going forward. So get that live service game there. But then also Forza Horizon 5, which seems strange, but it ran on the Xbox One, right? And it's a game that has seen continued success. It's a very popular franchise for Microsoft. It's shown that it can sell well anywhere. So why not test it here on the Switch 2? I put Call of Duty down because it makes sense for them to do it, to get Call of Duty here, but I understand we're kind of getting down to the wire for Black Ops 7, and even though they're treating this as a different kind of rollout where it's almost like they're just going to push the game out there without too much marketing, it feels like Warzone at minimum would, I think, be their best move here. Get a game over that has shown to be extremely popular for them and it makes a lot of money. Get that just started on the Switch 2, and then maybe start planning out whatever the next Call of Duty game is going to be in 2026, and have that more aligned with its announcement and the marketing for the Switch 2, the PlayStation 5, and the Xbox Series from the start. Otherwise, a lot of people are lumping Hi-Fi Rush in with Microsoft, although it's owned by Krafton now because of that sale that happened with them and Tango Gameworks. Yeah, Hi-Fi Rush, we've already heard about some stuff kind of in the background for it, some of the code for it being somewhat designed for Switch or Switch 2. And yeah, it wouldn't shock me if that one popped up. Although I am curious if maybe the transaction there kind of threw a wrench into at least some of the plans for this one. So while those are some of my predictions and just guesses, you may notice that I did not put Hollow Knight Silksong in there, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to. I don't think Hollow Knight Silksong is going to be at this event tomorrow, mostly because Microsoft seems to have a lot of the marketing and announcements for this game, and they've already placed it alongside of their ROG Xbox Ally handheld systems to where they're going to share a release date. We know that those are at Gamescom. We know Silksong is at Gamescom. So I think that's where we're going to get the Silksong release date along with the ROG Xbox Ally handheld. So no, I don't think it's at this event tomorrow. So I wouldn't necessarily go in expecting that. In fact, I would be surprised if it was. So that's kind of where I'd have my expectations, at least from the Hollow Knight Silksong crowd. So what would be the closeout here? What's something that would be hard hitting that get people very excited and would be a new announcement? Not a game that's already out or that we've necessarily had announced previously. That would be Final Fantasy IX Remake. And, you know, I am torn on this because Tokyo Game Show is coming up. It's right around the corner, really. And you feel like maybe that's where Square Enix would want to make the announcement for it. But man, what a hard-hitting closeout, because you could still do it, but then also dive more into the game and information about it at Tokyo Game Show, but just put a teaser out there, because they have been laying breadcrumb after breadcrumb after breadcrumb for this game. I mean, we're seeing all kinds of like official Final Fantasy IX artwork. We're seeing merchandise get out there, them mentioning this game constantly. And look, I know it's an anniversary time for this game, but they're doing it a little too much to where you feel like they have to have some big game announcement. And Final Fantasy IX Remake, provided it looks good, is that announcement. That would get people really, really hyped up coming off of this Nintendo Direct partner showcase. But those are some of my thoughts there. Again, kind of a shotgun blast of guesses and announcements for different games. And I mean, some of these have to end up being right, I feel like. So we'll see how it goes. But let me know what you guys think about this partner showcase down below in the comments and what some of your expectations are going into it tomorrow morning. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.